Hello and welcome to the June 23rd, 2021 Committee of the Whole. I'd like to call this meeting to order and recognize that we are meeting on the SWIA of the Sechelt Nation. And I also want to give a quick shout out to the Chalich 2021 grads who are graduating today. So congrats to everyone there. And I'd like to begin this meeting with a declaration of conflict, or ask for declaration of conflict. Does anyone have any conflicts that may arise today? Seeing none, I'm going to move on to adoption of the agenda. Do we have a mover of the agenda? Councillor Scott, second Councillor Rowe, all in favor? Perfect. We have no appointments and delegations, no new business, and we have business item 5.1, 2022 budget process. Can I get a motion to receive the report? Councillor Toth, Mayor Seegers, all in favor? Perfect. And I believe it's over to Director Douglas.
Thank you, Chair McLean. So since we finished the 2021 budget process, we've been thinking and working through our plans for the 22 budget process. Council has made it really clear that they would like to, be advanced in our budget process next year to where we were this year, which staff support greatly. And we put together a budget plan that definitely puts us more forward of where we were this year for 2022. But the plan is different than what we've experienced in the past, and it's different in the way that we would like to try and do budgeting over a couple of day sessions rather than multiple 2 or 3 hour budget meetings. And so I just wanted to highlight that as part of the plan, or as part of go forward, because that may be a discussion point that the committee would want to have. Included in the plan is some communication aspects, and it starts with a website survey that we would like to put out in early July. It also includes a strategic plan workshop for a day to go over the current strategic plan and to see if there's any current factors that may adjust that plan for 2022. And then for the next little bit of time, it would be staff working on the budget. We're just starting now to prepare the file for next year. And then we would be back in front of council or committee of the whole in November, reviewing the proposed 2022 financial plan. We would return to using the budget book that we've had used in the past, and we've also included a little more on public consultation. The plan right now would be to, once council sees, or committee of the whole sees the budget, we would go to a couple of sessions with the public thereafter, and then we would plan a couple of days to deliberate over the budget and really have it potentially ready for 3 readings. Now, if the dates don't work out, that could adjust the time frame, but this is what we're recommending at this point. If there's any questions or comments, I would love to hear from you.
All right. Thank you, Director Douglas. Do we have any questions? Mayor Seegers.
Thank you. I guess question for council is, do the dates work in our calendars? As we're looking at a strategic plan review on July 14th, and then the 2-day would be November 30th and December 1st.
Okay, maybe I'll just interject and do a quick round to answer Mayor Seeger's question about the calendar. So I'm just going to go in my screen order, and I have Councillor Rowe first to that question.
July 14th is fine. November 30th, December 1st, are those like full day workshops?
The intent would be longer day workshops. So, well, wouldn't be workshop, be committee of the whole meetings.
Okay.
We're not opposed to starting them a little later in the day, meaning let's say 2 o'clock, but then they would run later, maybe 6 to 7 o'clock, or we could run them from 9 till 5. There's some flexibility in timing for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I really appreciate having this laid out like this. Those dates work fine with me. I just need, notice for work, but they're good for me.
Okay. So on the dates, Councillor Toth?
Yeah, the dates work for me as well. November 30th and December 1st are Tuesday, Wednesday. So totally fine. Just a point of my own little feedback there is I would prefer starting a little later in the day. Those of us, might be able to sneak in some work in the morning or what have you. Might make it easier for people from the public to attend. If we do run late, they can at least tune in after work type of thing. So yeah, much more in favor of sort of afternoon, evening than morning.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Scott next on the dates.
Everything looks good. The only one that might be a challenge is July 14th. Just depends on what the fire hazard is and what's going on. But if it's not busy, then I'll be here.
Okay. Councillor Lamb?
Yeah, I'm wide open. It works good for me. I like the layout of the whole process here. I like where we're going.
Okay. And then I'll chime in. It works on my calendar. And Mayor Seegers, I assume it works for yours as well?
It works in mine. Nobody's put anything in there yet for me.
Perfect. So with that, I think I'll go back to my usual speaking list and go to Councillor Toth.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad that the question around the dates came up because that was one thing I had highlighted and wanting to know whether we were looking at half day or full days. So full days is good. Let's meet, let's discuss it, let's debate it, let's get it over with. I appreciate a much more compressed schedule than we did this last year. Sorry, I had a question up. Oh, the website survey. Are we looking at making paper copies available either in the library or in the mall for those in our community who are technologically challenged?
We will, yes.
Did you want to speak to that as well, Julie?
Yeah, whenever we do any survey, it's always online and we always have paper copies available in the library.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, over to Councillor Rowe. You're on mute.
Sorry, I was going to ask about the dates. So I just raised my hand before you started the roundtable. I'm good.
Perfect. Okay. I'm going to go back to Councillor Toth and then I'll put my name in the order after him.
Thank you. Yeah, so ideally 3 readings December 15th. Of course, that could slip if it needs to or what have you. Knowing that we need information from the regional district and the province and BC assessment, when would we be targeting adoption? Would we like February or March, or would it still be closer to the middle of May for adoption?
It would be closer. I don't get my BCAA information till fairly late, so I don't get that till usually early April, late March. But everything can be done by then. We would know like the tax value we would have to collect. It would just be then splitting it out into the different classes, so yeah, you would be a little bit later in adoption, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to follow up on that question. So given that adoption would be later, something that a lot of citizens look towards is the tax increase amount. and what percentage it would be. So I'm assuming that we wouldn't be looking to calculate that until later in the year.
No, we would know what the lift would be in December, and I can do most of the calculations. The only thing I can't calculate is like if there's a shift, meaning, you know, my property didn't go up much, but let's just say her worships went up quite a bit. So, I wouldn't be able to give the details of a specific property, but I can, I can certainly be able to tell you what the average increase would be generally from in December.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And then I'll just jump in if I don't see anyone else with questions. Just looking to the impact of this schedule shift on the finance department and potentially other departments. It's a pretty radical shift from what we've done previously, and it essentially messes up your entire year's schedule. So I just want to hear a little bit about the potential impacts of this change on the general operations of the finance department.
We feel that this would be a positive on our department. Splitting year end and budgeting, creates us to be able to focus more on one thing and then focus on the other one. Right now, we have to focus both on budgeting and year end, and often I'm competing, with budgeting and year end staff time. And so separating them will actually make it better for us, because now I'm not going to be competing with year end requirements and have to potentially, wait a day or, have them work some extra time if that's what we need. So yeah, I think it's a positive change.
Okay, that's good to hear. Over to Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Just a sort of a comment on the community associations and the requests that come in each year. I'm wondering if we can get them to look at maybe a high value long-term item, as well as a couple of sort of low cost, high value items. I know in the past we've seen everything from please install no parking signs to please increase the amount of brushing to please build a community hall in our neighborhood. Obviously some of those are more can be more readily tackled in a given year than others. And I'm just wondering if we can tell them, like, look, you're free to include a high value, longer term goal, so we know what your vision is for your neighborhood. But do keep in mind, like, the realistic nature of budgeting and the community associations all having requests that need to be looked at.
Yeah, we can engage in that conversation with them for sure when we sit down with them.
Okay. And on a similar note to Councillor Toth, I'm wondering if that meeting could perhaps be done with council and staff rather than just staff. So the reason for that is sometimes there's these larger asks, and I think I find value in kind of seeing their year-to-year priorities and just being able to suss out and have a little bit of a conversation with them. Whereas right now they meet with staff reports back the results to us. So there's just that little bit of disconnect and that inability for a conversation to evolve. Because I think a lot of these community associations have a really good vision for their community. And I just like to be a little more connected to that as a council. So what I'd like to see is it being more of a council conversation rather than a staff conversation. Mayor Seegers?
Thank you. Further to that, could that be something that council could take on separately? I mean, prior to the pandemic, we did meetings with SCAF, right, where the Community Association Forum would meet with us, and we had discussions back and forth. They would put things on the agenda. We'd put things on the agenda. I'm hoping that by September, we'll be able to go back to having some of those meetings. So maybe it would be council meeting with them. I mean, I get where you're going with this, in that we want to hear their, their wishes for their community, but does it have to be at the meeting that staff have with them? Or do we, have the whole group together so that they also share with each other what they're putting forward? I don't know. I mean, I think that's something we need to look at, and would definitely be something that we could figure out how to make happen.
we as senior management team here, we could talk about that and see how we either can make it happen or how it could look. You know, once we have council together, often it's a committee of the whole meeting. So we could either have them all come into one particular time frame and have a committee of the whole where they present, or we have a representative from council, or there's options there.
Mayor Seegers.
So this is another topic. So I don't know if you have others want to speak on this topic.
Maybe just stay on this one for a few more moments. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to weigh in on this too. The SCAF meetings were quite beneficial when we were able to have them. So I'm wondering if there's an opportunity to utilize the SCAF forum, perhaps with a couple of staff in attendance to record and weigh in from the staff and the management perspective. But I could go either way. I mean, September 1st, I think, is a council meeting day. So I don't know if we wanted to have a committee of the whole meeting before that, they could present, or if we want to try and add it into September 8th. I guess it's going to depend on what we've got coming up on the agendas around the start of September, but I'm flexible either way. But I think it would be much more valuable for both us and the community associations to have more direct engagement on their wishes.
Okay, so I'm trying to figure out a way forward at this point, because we have a couple opinions floating around. But what is missing is the community associations. What do they really want to see? So perhaps a follow-up could be that the mayor brings up the issue to the community associations, and we have a discussion in advance of what they'd like the process to be. And I'd look to staff to see if they'd like more direction on this particular item at this point, or can we put it off for a month or two while we talk with staff and the community associations?
We certainly could engage the community associations prior to making that decision, and see how what kind of engagement they would like to see, and then work with the community charter and make sure whatever engagement works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that was kind of mentioned, potentially doing it at a committee of the whole.
Yeah.
So I think we can kind of pencil something in there on the agenda, and we'll work out details and hopefully have something for the community before we do this in September. If everyone's all right with that, I don't think we need a motion just to have a discussion. So I'll move on to Mayor Seegers.
Thank you. On page 3, just before strategic plan, it says, having just recently completed the 2021 to 2025 financial plan, it would now be a good opportunity for the committee to provide thoughts on this year's budget process. So my question and about the budget process has actually been addressed in here inside of putting together the budget book, because one of the items that I did not feel went well was the material that came to council ahead of committee of the whole meetings. So many times when I'd open the agenda, I would have financial statements, but no explanation about what I was looking at. Did it incorporate information that we talked about? Did it not incorporate information? What were we supposed to be deliberating on that day, right? So I think the budget book and the process as it laid out will address my issues with the previous process. So thank you.
So maybe I'll just jump in on a similar piece of big picture feedback for the previous year. I think Councillor Toth briefly mentioned it, but the schedule was prolonged. I think consolidating it into a couple of days is a good move. But what I really did enjoy about this year's process was it was very much focused on the merits of each individual project. So we really got to go through every single project and just think about how this will work. So it was kind of on a more micro scale than a macro scale, and then we got to take a look at the big picture at the end. So I'd be interested to see how that works in this process, but I think as long as we keep on focusing on every little project as we go through, because I think that those new projects are really what's critical. Councillor Toth.
Thank you. There's a couple of items that aren't specifically identified, and I just wanted to bring them up to see where and how we might fit in conversation around them. I know that Councillor Lamb, near the end of this last budget process, suggested an affordable housing reserve tax. I think it's a good idea. I'd like to have broader conversation with the community about it, but really that's a very new concept, very new program. So that needs sort of its own engagement, if you will. I know I've had conversation with other councillors about the idea of revisiting our tax exemptions that we provide. You know, there are certain parameters of the program that are required. For example, a church, the place of worship, the building itself is required to be exempt by provincial legislation, but the land around it is not. Do we look at capping our tax exemption program? Do we look at perhaps bringing some of those numbers down a little bit? What could a future of that program look like? I'm just a couple of things that would be, fairly substantial changes to make. So I don't really want to try and sort of shoehorn them in with any other decisions that are being made, but opportunities to have discussions and dialogue and consultation around those would be good.
Okay, just Director Douglas, do you have a response to that, or we could just kind of let it stand?
That both of those may be able to be talked about in our strategic planning session day. They're both big picture items, and so we could start with it there and then see where it goes. And if we have to schedule a specific meeting just to discuss those, we can do that within this time frame. There may be others that come up between now and our first meeting that we want to discuss as we want to consider bringing this in or whatever the topic may be.
Okay. Mary Seegers?
So we will probably need to communicate the change timeline. I met with the RCMP today on some other matters, and I did bring it up with them because they're going to need the heads up as well. The library will probably want to present, but their budget is fixed at this point. Is there anybody else that we need to let know?
Well, usually, Scredo,
right,
the visitors, RCMP, and the library all usually have presented. So yes, we would let those folks know.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're nearing the end, but I'll jump in with one more. Just throughout our public consultation, I want us to try and focus on generative discussion. So that is the idea that we are developing new ideas. So particularly the survey. I think that's a great opportunity for citizens to suggest ideas. So what could we do? What would they like to see? And the same thing with the strategic plan review. I think it's not a strategic plan, it's kind of big picture. What kind of ideas do we want to discuss through this budget process? And then we kind of talked about it as well with the community associations. What kind of ideas do they have? I think if we really start with these ideas, we can try and set some of those bigger pictures things and start that long-term planning for some of the larger changes that we want to see. And that's, I think, a really good change in this process. Starting with the strategic plan review is the critical step that I think was lacking a little bit in the past years. So start with those ideas, then we try and figure out how to fund them. And that's exactly what a budget is. So I like it. Councillor Toth?
Yeah, you raised very good points. There were a number of items that were brought up last year during meetings where they were very mission critical. There was nothing we could do about them. You know, insurance is up, utilities are up. This, you know, these are our contractual obligations. You know, it's nice to make note of them, but yeah, I'm more interested in the conversation around the items that we and our community can have some say over and some sway with regards to. Thanks.
So I suspect we're nearing the end. There is a recommended motion. Would somebody like to make that motion? Councillor Toth.
I will move recommendation 2 that council approve the proposed 2022 budget process as presented.
Okay, and do we have a seconder? Councillor Rowe, all in favor? Perfect, that passes. And is there, I believe that's the end of our agenda. So I'm going to make a motion to adjourn. Seconded, all in favor?